of people interested in the Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. fight, and I let this one sneak up on me. I didn't even realize it was going on today. But just right away on the surface, something jumps out. Roy Jones Jr. is 51 years old, and Mike Tyson comes in with 50 wins. If he defeats Roy Jones Jr., he'll get his 51st win, defeating 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr. And we talked about earlier today how we get the first cardinal, the first black cardinal from America, exactly 51 weeks after his birthday. And we talked about how on Thursday Night Football, where the Cardinals and Seahawks were bumped to primetime, knocking out Tom Brady, how if the Cardinals won that night, they'd be 5-2, and the Seahawks would fall to 5-1, getting their first loss of the season. And we said that because Pope equals 52 and Rome equals 51. And the Cardinals, with the young black quarterback Murray, got pushed to primetime the same day that Pope Francis nominated the first black cardinal from America. And said, see, more evidence of how it all works. The big script. Politics, the church, the White House, rig sports. We've been showing this kind of stuff year after year after year. And so anyway, there's this 51 thing going on today, right? And the other thing I just know off the top of my head is the name Michael equals 51, which is Mike Tyson's full name. So Mike Tyson's next win, 51, a significant number to the name Michael. And right away, I just looked at Roy Jones Jr.'s name. His full name's interesting, but here's actually what's more interesting. Roy Jones' full name, Roy LaVesta Jones Jr., equals 233, which is the 51st prime number, right? And he's 51 years old right now. He's going to fight this fight after all these years. Michael, 51, Tyson could get his 51st win. And there's a lot more that I see here, but before I go on further with this, I want to go back and remind what we talked about earlier this year with the Fury-Wilder fight, which was a very easy riddle to see through when you understand Gematria. So, let's go back to Wilder-Fury. If you're new here, Gematria, it's very simple code. It's based on the alphabetic order forwards and backwards and the rules of numerology. I'm just going to type out the name Deontay. So out of these 4 ciphers, there's one that's considered the most important. It's the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology, where Deontay is 30. Tyson Fury, with a win over Deontay Wilder, was going to get his 30th win. So that mattered. That 30 mattered, but there was a lot more to that. The name Tyson has Gematria 42 in the base ciphers, and I'll explain how these work, but they're all important. And Deontay Wilder went into the fight on 42 wins, and he lost, so he stayed on 42 wins. And Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder, getting his 30th win, 30 and 42. Now, I'm going to write out some words. I'm going to write out slavery. You see how it's 30 and 42? Write out Tuskegee, 30, 42, right? Write out the N-word. It's got the 30 and 42 in it. These numbers are used ritualistically a lot. I wrote a book about this. The first book I ever put out, the 18th chapter, is about how these numbers are used in this ritual shaming, this rigging of sports, this murdering of celebrities, and used in relation to race. And, like Tyson, he lost the 42-1 fight on the 42nd day of the year, February 11th. You can understand the significance of that joke. The name Jackie equals 42, like Jackie Robinson, number 42. This year, the Dodgers won the World Series 4-2 on Jackie Robinson's funeral anniversary. Chadwick Boseman this summer was 42 years old, dying from illness, and then when he died, he should have been 42, but they changed the age of death to 43, which we documented in real time, how the media flipped it over. But Robinson, 43, goes from 42 to 43, dies on Jackie Robinson Day. A million more things to say about that. But again, the way these numbers are used ritualistically again and again. Notice when I write out the word slave, it equals 59 and 76. Notice when I write out Negro, it's 59 and 76. Notice when I write out Rasta, it's 59 and 76. Notice when I write out Blues, it's 59 and 76. Obama, the name Barack Obama, you see how it's 76? You see how Renegade, which was his Secret Service name, look it up if you doubt it. Renegade, you'll see that was his Secret Service name, 59. He just turned 59 on August 4th, and he just put out his new book, A Promised Land, which equals 59 and 76, like slave. And again, the Million Man March was in Washington, D.C., October 16th, 95, the day leaving 76 days left in the year. And we said to watch out for what would happen after August of 2019, Acts 7:6, the 400-year prophecy of slavery in America. And, well, in the Bible, it's not of America, but it's the prophecy of 400 years a slave in a foreign nation. And then the next verse is how that nation gets punished. And we said, man, August of 2019 is going to be 400 years of slavery in America on the history books. And the next verse is that nation gets punished. And that next verse is Acts 7:7 in the United States is 77. And sure enough, it wasn't long after August 2019, all of a sudden we got coronavirus and the whole nation shut down and there's all these problems and there's rumors of war and starvation and all this crap going on. You know, all biblical concepts. But we've just been talking about the patterns in these same numbers and you know, there's been a lot. But today's fight is on a date with 59 numerology and it's going to be Roy Jones Jr.'s 76th fight of his career. So these numbers come together again. Been talking about them all over. Sports, stories, rituals, these same number pairings. Chadwick Boseman, whatever his cause of death was, equaled 59 and 76. Was it kidney something? I forget what it was. Hold on. But now that I said that, it's going to bother me. Let me see if I can look it up real quick. Chadwick Boseman, 5976. Cannot remember what it was. Let me see if I put it in this post. Oh, yeah, colon cancer. They said he died from colon cancer. And the date that he supposedly died was a date with 76 numerology. His last tweet, which they made a big deal about, was Kamala Harris being picked for VP for the 59th U.S. presidential election on the 59 date numerology. But colon's 59 and 76, and colon cancer's 59. See how they do it, you guys? I mean, on Jackie Robinson Day, on the anniversary of the birthday of Jack Kirby, who wrote Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman dies. And Jackie Robinson was in World War II in a tank battalion that was known as the Black Panthers. At least this is all in the mainstream. But anyway, now we have this 59 date numerology and Roy Jones Jr.'s 76th fight. Show you how this really comes together. With regards to 59, Revelation has 59. And remember, there's a description of Jesus in Revelation when he returns. His skin is dark, and his hair is white like wool, how it's described. And I always point out that like wool part, and people get mad, but I say, you know, I know what group of people have hair like wool, and it makes sense because Revelation's based on the Old Testament, and the oldest person in the Old Testament's Methuselah, who's black. He's weirded out by his albino child, and I don't know, people just get so offended. Some people do, not everyone, but some people just get so offended at the idea that Jesus could be black. So, the wool doesn't have anything to do with the texture of his hair, just white like wool's the color description. Okay, I just maintain that there's other ways to describe the color white besides white like wool. Like wool. In terms of his hair? Okay, I guess it's just a coincidence. But, what's interesting is, again, I normally just talk about the base ciphers. There are other ciphers that are important. Like, do you know this trick with all three of the Kabbalah ciphers? The word riddle happens to equal 74 in every single cipher. That's a relevant cipher. I don't talk about it very much, but there's very interesting things about that cipher. Notice I just read out something random, Washington, D.C. That's not the same in every cipher. The only word that I know like that is riddle, and we know how important 74 is. But, again, there are other ciphers on here that are important. I rarely ever talk about most of them. But, again, the Septenarian Chaldean, when I first just started researching ciphers to see if there was relevance based on things I'd researched, something that really jumped out to me was African American. It equals 44 and 43. Obama was number 44, elected 44 years after the Civil Rights Act. MLK killed on 4-4, Malcolm X on the 44 date. But even though he was number 44, he was still only the 43rd person to ever be president. And years before I discovered these ciphers and saw things like that, you know, what I did realize is that Obama gave his acceptance speech November 4th, 2008, which was a date with 43 numerology, and Grant Park, 43, and the land of Lincoln. And there's so many things about Lincoln that are 43. Some interesting numbers over here with Grant Park and these ciphers as well. But again, like Washington, D.C. in these two ciphers, they're 47. And these ciphers are interrelated as well. So again, these are ciphers that you could study independently because they're related amongst themselves and what's encoded in them. But what you don't see me do is like, have all these different ciphers up and see, there's the number I'm looking from there. There's the number I'm looking from there. It's just, I've realized how these ciphers work together, and the ciphers that I choose to work within are the ciphers that are the most intuitive, the most simple to understand, and seemingly the most useful as well. But yeah, there's absolutely, again, because you know how big 47 is to Washington, D.C. So Septenary Chaldean, it's 47. And, I was also going to say, with regards to 59 date numerology in this Coding of Black History, Jesus Christ is 59 in this septenary cipher. But, again, in light of both of those ciphers, Washington, D.C. being 47 in, remember all the things in the base ciphers, which are the 4 ciphers that we almost always talk about. Just remember, D.C. is 47 when you run the alphabetic order in reverse. Government's 47 with the reverse alphabetic order and rules numerology. Authority is 47 with the alphabetic order and rules numerology, just like Republican, 47. And then when you flip it around, Democrats 47. And did we say White House is 47, just like President's 47? Again, the odds of those ciphers producing that for all those values, again, not just because people will always say, well, maybe 4 ciphers, you can get whatever you want. Again, I'll just do my name. Zachary, do you see a 47? My middle name, Keith, 47? No. Hubbard? No. How about putting my 2 names together? Zachary Hubbard. Is there a 47? No. What about with my middle name? No. So you can't just type in anything and get whatever you want, which means that there's a rhyme and a reason to what's encoded. Okay, so coming back to this 59 date numerology, I started to notice something. I looked at both of their names and I said, wow, Roy Jones Jr. is 149 and 121. And I said Revelation is 121 and 149. And you see how it's 49 and 59 as well? Because again, we have this 59 date numerology. I said Mike Tyson is 49. So I said, okay, we have all these Revelation numbers here. And if you know anything about Revelation, the concluding book of the Bible, Michael is the leader of the army of heaven, right? And the name Michael, just to go back to what I've always known about Michael since I began teaching this in 2013, where these were the only 2 ciphers I knew. Michael, with the alphabetic order is 51, like how Roy Jones Jr. is 51 and Mike Tyson's next one is 51. But Michael's also 33, and today leaves 33 days left in the year. So what are the odds? What are the odds? And the word biblical is 58. You see how Roy Jones Jr. is 50 in the most pure cipher? That's how many wins Mike Tyson comes in on. He comes on 50. So if you're out there and you like Roy Jones Jr. tonight, you think he's younger, the better boxer at this point, both of these guys were the man in their respective weight classes and in their day. Listen, if you like Roy Jones Jr., you go right ahead and take him. There's a chance Mike Tyson stays on 50 wins tonight. But I'm going to show you what I'm looking at with seeing this bigger revelation riddle here and what I know about the way these people like to do their numbers. You see how Mike Tyson's born in 66, like the concluding book of the Bible's Revelation, the 66th book of the Bible? And I just want to make a point. So this is why, after 3 years of studying just those 2 ciphers, I realized that running the alphabetic order in reverse was necessary. I always knew that New Testament equaled 42 with the most pure cipher, just like it begins with the 42 generations to Jesus. But what I didn't know until 3 years after studying is that when you ran the alphabetic order in reverse and used the rules of numerology, it equaled 66, like how the New Testament ends with the 66th book of the Bible. And then what stood out to me is how the word math was 42 forwards and 66 in reverse, because the New Testament begins with Matthew. And Matthew, the way it's spelled, equals 27, just like how there's 27 books in the New Testament, because there's 39 in the Old Testament, 27 in the New, concluding with the 66th book. But anyway, just doing things by the numbers. And really, all this stuff traces back to the church. Catholicism's 112. Notice so is mathematics. Catholicism and mathematics are both 112 and 68 and 185. The exact same in 3 out of the 4 ciphers. And the Vatican, for example, established February 11th, 11/2, like 112. The Jesuits claim they operate in 112 countries. I suspect they really operate in more. But Anyway, Mike Tyson, born in 66. It says he has 58 bouts. Somebody with more boxing knowledge is going to have to help me out. It says he's 50 wins, 6 losses. I don't see any draws here, so where's the other 2 bouts? Do, like, disqualifications get taken off the record? I don't know. But if so, that means tonight would be his 59th bout. So he's about to have his 59th bout as an old man versus Roy Jones Jr. And I see his debut was March 6th. That's funny because it's kind of like 3-6. 666 is the 36th triangular number. He's born 630, June 30th. But again, he's going for his 51st win versus 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr., whose full name is Roy LaVesta Jones Jr., which equals 233, which is the 51st prime number. And what else stands out is from Mike Tyson's birthday to today is 151 days later. Again, we're talking about how they're always doing these Jesus Christ rituals with black men in entertainment, from sports to music. And, you know, Jonathan, we've been talking about this same number, 151, in a number of rituals. I noticed that today is exactly a span of 43 weeks from Super Bowl 54. Somebody out there will be like, wait, tomorrow Sunday would be 43 weeks later. That's why I'm saying a span. If you count the span of days, if you count the span, it'd be 43 weeks and 1 day to next Sunday, because the Super Bowl's obviously on a Sunday. And anyone can quickly verify what I'm saying on a date duration calculator, but anyway, it's 151 days after Mike Tyson's birthday. Big number with Jesus Christ. 151 is also the 36th prime number. And again, 666 is the 36th triangular number, which is taught about in Revelation, the 66th book of the Bible. I'm going to bring all this together in a moment. You see how Roy Jones Jr. comes in with 66 wins and 9 losses to face Mike Tyson, born in 66? And just to be fair to the Gematria, with the most simple cipher, the alphabetic order, if you write out 50 as a word, it's 66. Again, Mike Tyson coming in with the 50 wins. But, and for those who think something like that's silly, you didn't win on the Oregon State Beavers upsetting Oregon Ducks last night, who were 13.5-point underdogs. I said they were worth a good bet alone with a parlay of a bunch of rock-solid teams, because that could be a big parlay multiplier. And anyone who took that advice is real happy because, again, here's how it works. Some numbers, when you write them out as words, have very important relationships. This was week 13 for college football, and if you write out 13, it's 45 and 45. Notice Beavers equals 45, and Oregon State Beavers equals 104. Well, yesterday, in their 104th game versus Oregon, they got their 45th win in week 13. And I did tell people not to go bet the house on it, because the one danger was Ducks is 13, and the Beavers, had they lost, they would have been 1-3. But there was a good riddle for them to get the upset and a ton of value. And that's why, if you have Gematria knowledge, there were a whole bunch of rock-solid games that came through this week with teams picking up the 6th win or 6th loss, because it's week 13 and 13 is the 6th prime. But where you can see these potential upsets, if you take a game like that and you just bet $5 on it and group all the other rock-solid picks that are like, between a touchdown and 4 touchdown favorites, if you stick 8 of those games together, which are, you can pretty much, you can rest easy on most of those games because they're big spreads. They don't pay a lot, but you stick them together with a team like the Beavers winning, who are 13.5-point dogs. That's where a little bit of money can become a lot of money, and you don't have to risk a lot on a big underdog. Because a lot of times there are good riddles for these underdogs, and they'll play a really close game and they'll cover the spread, but they'll end up losing in the closing moments. That's why the beauty of this knowledge is, if you're a gambler and you're trying to win a lot of money each night, you don't have to go out and risk a lot, because normally that's what you have to do. You have to go lay a lot of money on what you think is the sure bet to try and turn that into a lot more money. But with Gematria, you can turn small amounts of money into big amounts. And people have been proving that again and again in this community. So, literally, turning $5 bills into thousands of dollars. The biggest I've seen so far to date that somebody shared with me was Big Al, who turned a $5 bill into like 10,600, something like that. And that was from the knowledge of Gematria, So anyway, a lot of 66 here, a lot of important numbers, biblical numbers. It's his 76th fight, Acts 7:6, the prophecy from the 44th book of the Bible, like how we were talking about Obama, number 44, just put out that book of Promised Land, which relates to Abraham in the Bible, a name that equals 44. And not to mention, Obama's book just came out November 17th, the day leaving 44 days left in the year. But, Again, this is how it all fits together, and I still got a few more things to show here. So again, 59 date numerology, 76th fight for Roy Jones Jr. And the one thing I could say for Jones is if he won tonight, he'd have his 67th win, which is the 19th prime. Yesterday, that statue they put up in at the Texas Longhorn Stadium, it was a guy in jersey number 67. And sometimes things are as simple as that, just recognizing a pattern that's going on. That's possible. 67 being the 19th prime is interesting because the name Floyd's 19, and there's been a lot of stuff with George Floyd this year. But really, I'm looking at the Michael revelation numbers, and that's what can be tricky. Sometimes, you know, you can mistake the riddle or overlook something it's just right there. So for people like Roy Jones, there's a chance he gets his 67th win tonight. But notice, if he does not win, he stays on 66, right? Revelation, the 66th book of the Bible, Michael, the archangel, the leader of the heaven of army. I think I might have just misspoke. The army of heaven? But anyway, if Mike Tyson wins, again, he gets that 51st win, Michael's 51, and think about what the numerology of 51 is. 5 plus 1 is 6, so the numerology of 51 is 6. Roy Jones would stay on 66 wins. Big numbers in the Bible. Mankind's made on the 6th day in the 26th verse. And in Genesis 6:6, God regrets making mankind. New Testament 66, the Bible 66 books. Mike Tyson born in 66. Roy Jones on 66 wins. And so again, if he loses, he stays on 66. Mike Tyson gets his 51st win, which in numerology is 6, so you have 3 6s up there. The phrase number of the beast is 66. A lot of stuff with that number this year, and LeBron and winning it with the Lakers. Remember, LeBron 66, Lakers 66. We were talking about that LeBron James album that came out on the 66th day of the year. More confirmation LeBron was getting to 4 and 6 in the finals this year, and how it didn't look good for King Von, the rapper. We'd probably be talking about his death in the near future, and November 6th, Dead by the Numbers. Again, that album name, LeBron James. Look at this, you guys. In the 2 original ciphers that I taught, LeBron James is 116 and 35. That rapper died on 11/6, exactly 35 weeks after the album came out. LeBron James is 35 years old. Remember, when you write out King James is 35 in the most pure cipher, and the real King James became a Freemason at age 35. But LeBron James, 116:35. The album, The Death. Dead on 11/6, 35 weeks after the album comes out. LeBron James is 154, also like King James, and 55, also like King James. Notice how nothing changes when I write King James in those 3 ciphers. 35, 154, 55. Same thing. And the day he died, November 6th, was the day leaving 55 days left in the year. So realize, this is how it was, realizing that reverse gematria was important. You know, back when we said LeBron was going to come back from down 3 when he was down 3-1, we said he was going to come back and win it on the real King James' birthday. When he did, the Warriors lost with 89 points. And then when does LeBron win his next finals? When he's 35 years old. King James numbers, right? And again, LeBron James, 116-35. Similar, but a little bit different. But realize, the reason I realized reverse gematria was important is because I started to go back over all my older stuff that I had already presented on and made posts about over the course of 3 years, and just looking at it with the reverse gematria lens. And it's just like, imagine if I had presented on LeBron James and all I knew about was this, you know, the 35 and 116. It would be a very interesting presentation, just like it was back before I knew these other ciphers. But then, once you learn reverse, you're like, whoa, wow, he even died on the day leaving 55 days left in the year. And it also overlaps with King James. And earlier this year, we said, you know, more confirmation LeBron's winning the finals by the numbers this year. Because, again, we called LeBron to win the NBA Finals in his 17th season, bringing home the Lakers' 17th championship the day he signed on 1/7, understanding that NBA is 17, and that's a big number in the NBA. LeBron's $153 million contract, as it was first reported, the 17th triangular number. And then later they bumped it up to $154 million, the headlines. They went from 153 to 154, and with Gematria, you can understand why. First they pay tribute to 17, then they pay tribute to King James. It's all ritual. So anyway, the other thing about 66, I just wrote this stuff out here, but I'll just show you in real time. Roy Jones Jr.'s birthday is January 16th. That's weird. We were just talking about 116, weren't we? But January 16th, here, I'll just do it. January 16th to today, November 28th, 2020. Notice it's 317 days later. That's the 66th prime number. And if you want to verify that, you can go to numberempire.com and just type in 317. It says, is it prime? Yes, it's the 66th prime number. So, more tribute to 66, right? Mike Tyson, born in 66. He's on 66 wins. This fight, why are these guys fighting at age 51 and 54? This is just like, I guess it's interesting. People want to watch it. Everybody was asked. That's all anybody cared about today. Nobody cares that their rights are getting taken away, or, they just care. Again, you guys, all roads lead to Rome, even your own minds. Even though, anyway, look at this. Mike Tyson's the older one, right? He's 54, and we know all about 54. Big number with the Jesuits, Jesuit Order 54. John Carroll, 54, established the first Jesuit university while he was 54 years old in 1789. But remember, Mark of the Beast is 54, so is Jesuit Order. And with all this 66, we can get the 666 riddle if Mike Tyson wins tonight. And they think about how they often refer to these athletes and these men as beasts. How many times have you heard Mike Tyson referred to as a beast before? That's the one piece of information I'm missing. For the hardcore decoder, if you know what day out there, I will check in with the chat in a moment when I'm done presenting. If somebody knows what day this fight was declared, that could be another clue. That's the one piece I don't know. When was this fight agreed to? I want to know what day this fight was announced, the day it was officially set, because I always like to measure from that day to the day of the fight. There's often a big clue there. That's the one thing I'm blind on right now. But anyway, the 666 thing, the number of the beast is 666, which is the number of the beast, the number of a man as well. Again, man made on the sixth day. And the mark of the beast in Revelation is when that number is worn on the right hand or the forehead. So the mark of the beast and the number of the beast, these related concepts. Remember, Kobe Bryant, his career high was 81 points in his 666th career game. 666 on January 22nd. 122, satanic equals 122. So does abortion, and that's the day of Roe v. Wade, 122. The Satanic Church was established on the 122nd Meridian West in San Francisco, which equals 122. But Kobe Bean Bryant, his full name's 54 and 81, like Mark of the Beast. Think about it. He died one Sunday before Super Bowl 54, and his career high, 81 in his 666th game, and they can pay tribute to 666 again this year. This is the year he died. You know what I mean? So you always kind of want to look at the patterns that are going on throughout the year that are fluid, and what could make today's a little bit tricky is the numbers I'm talking about, the Revelation, the Mark of the Beast, this stuff's the more consistent. But I do have to acknowledge that this does come one day after the statue of the first black Letterman player at Texas, who was number 67. So, I mean, if Roy Jones wins tonight, I guess there was more to that I didn't understand. But I really am looking at the Michael Revelation thing here, the 666 thing. And if you know more about what Mike Tyson's been up to in terms of TV shows, movies, there could be some other clues that have been thrown out there. Again, as much as I keep up with things, I don't actually keep up with pop culture that well. But again, in the New Testament, Michael leads God's armies against Satan's forces in the book of Revelation. And I'm telling you, they're always using biblical riddles in their rig sports and their rig news. Talk about it all the time. Michael 51, Michael 33 in the Most Pure Cipher on the day, leaving 33 days left in the year. We'll see if Mike Tyson gets to 51 wins over 51-year-old Roy Jones Jr. And I also just had to measure from the pandemic, because we've been talking about all the revelation theming with the pandemic. From the start of the pandemic to this fight is a span of 263 days, which is interesting. That's the 56th prime number. Society of Jesus, 56. Who's controlling all this stuff? Doing all these riddles? Controlling entertainment, politics, the things that control the minds of the masses. All roads lead to Rome. Rome 51. But it's the 263rd day of the pandemic. Big number with so many of the agendas. People in the NFL, they keep testing 56 players positive for coronavirus. It's also a span of 43 weeks from Super Bowl 54 since Mike Tyson's 54 years old. That's interesting to me because football is 43. Big ritual with Patrick Mahomes this year in Super Bowl 54. And I also noticed that the way Wikipedia is promoting this, you see how they have this pre-fight record up here? That's kind of a misleading stat, because if somebody looks at this, they might not know what that means. That happens to be Mike Tyson's career record. So Wikipedia is promoting the pre-fight record as Mike Tyson's, but to me, why wouldn't they have both their records up there? You know what I mean? So I just realized that Mike's nickname equals 56. Iron is 56. Interesting. Iron Mike. Okay. All right. Well, I'm just going to leave it there. If you guys have a great additional thought, you can leave a great comment. You can join Free to Find Truth, start up a discussion. Why don't you guys do that, man? That's the place. That's what I'm trying to get you guys to do. You know, I know that we do a lot of the call-in shows and people share information, but this website's 100% free to use. You could set up a group on here to Decode Sports. There already are groups like that. You could join one, share information. And it looks like somebody's got a story up right here from ABC News. So I'm guessing there's a lot more clues out there. And again, the more information you have, the better of an opinion you can come to. But what I'm watching tonight is if we get one more big Revelation 666 tribute in the year of the pandemic, where they've been coding 666 all over the place. Again, the clues are there with the 66s and the Revelation encoding and the date and the names of both fighters. You know what? Okay, I'm going to throw out a devil's advocate narrative. Truly a devil's advocate narrative. I was just trying to think, what would be the symbolism if Roy Jones won and got to 67? Okay, I'm just going to entertain this thought. I still like the Mike Tyson paying tribute to the number ritual, but I did just think about something that is important to mention here. Again, in the New Testament, Michael leads God's armies against Satan's forces in the book of Revelation. The word satanic with the alphabetic order is 67. So I don't know if Roy Jones Jr. is supposed to represent Satan tonight, but if he does win and gets to 67, defeating Michael, I think the symbolism is pretty clear. And understand, that doesn't mean if Mike Tyson wins, what we're in for peaches and cream and everything's about to turn around in 2021. Far from it. But yeah, just understand, it's all symbolism. The whole show is truly evil and rigged. And that's the real point I'm trying to make. So it's amazing how they do it. Again, it's 151 days after Mike Tyson's birthday. Revelations about the return of Jesus Christ, right? And here, just to put it all on the screen, his birthday is June 30th, 66, just so you can see it with your own eyes, because I only wrote it down in the post. I didn't do the screenshots. I got lazy. But from his birthday to the fight, it's 151 days. So he represents Jesus Christ, and I guess Roy Jones Jr. represents Satan. And Roy Jones Jr. does have the 122 and the 50 in his name. I guess if Mike Tyson loses, he stays on 50 wins. So again, if you're out there in the Roy Jones Jr. camp, you stick with your guns. But just the way they've been doing 666 all year, these simulations, this encoding, all this vaccine stuff. And again, like I said in the beginning, the Black Cardinal 51 weeks after his birthday today, Wilton Gregory, which they already synced up with the World of Sports in the Cardinals-Seahawks game. So I'll tell you what, it seems like 3 years ago every riddle was just so simple, and in recent years they just make everything a little bit more interesting. Again, this was yesterday. First black letterman. Number 66, statue unveiled for the Texas Longhorns on the day leaving 34 days left in the year. Black 34. Black forwards is 11, like the 11th month. And again, today in the 11th month, 34 days after the nomination, you get Gregory Wilton. So 34 rituals with black men in back-to-back days. You know, stuff's ritual. So nominated October 25th before that Cardinals game. Officially in 34 days later. And right here from his birthday, Pearl Harbor Day, to officially a Cardinal, 51 weeks. And then the big sporting event today, the big number right there is 51. Mike Tyson trying to get his 51st win versus Roy Jones Jr., who is appropriately named Roy Levesta Jones Jr., 233, the 51st prime. And again, fitting day for a Michael. So we'll leave it there for all of you sports fanatics. Be back on Patreon. I'm running a little bit late. It might still be an hour and a half yet, but then we'll talk about NFL Week 12. Same types of rituals they're doing in the NFL this week. For all of you guys who are into the sports thing, that's where we mostly do it, Patreon. But just since so many people have so much interest in this fight, thought I'd throw it out for everybody. So we'll leave it there, you guys. And don't forget to hit the like. I see we got some good viewers, but hardly any likes. Man, can't even hit the like. I guess people just don't respect this information. It's part of the, I don't know. It's part of, I guess, people only seem to like trash and mediocrity. Oh well.